I bought a mountain cabin to rebuild my life, not to watch a stranger sip coffee in my kitchen and call me a trespasser. Paper deed in my hand, heart in my throat, I stood on my own porch, while Kendra Malloy, pure HOA, Karen Energy in $200, yoga pants smirked and purred, adverse possession, look it up, sweetheart, before slamming the door. Minutes later, her buddy deputy rolled up, hugged her on the driveway, and warned me to leave her residence. That's the moment rage turned into resolve. If you've ever been told your legal rights don't matter because someone louder said so, this is your story. I'm going to show you how I flipped the script, the receipts, the cameras, the law, and the final move that made the whole HOA clap back in handcuffs. This is my home, my fight, and my payback. Before we dive in, drop your city and local time in the comments, and if you live for HOA drama and savage turnarounds, hit subscribe so you don't miss the twist. When I first bought that old cabin, it felt like the start of redemption. Divorce had taken half my assets, half my sanity, and all my faith in people. The auction notice looked like fate. Pine Ridge County foreclosed mountain property, starting bid $9,000. The photos were ugly, sagging, porch-cracked windows, weeds devouring the siding. Perfect. I wasn't buying comfort, I was buying silence. 2 acres of it. After years of dealing with clients who thought a contractor's time was a suggestion, I craved something I could fix without anyone breathing down my neck. My plan was simple: 1 year hard labor, and I'd flip the place into a $60,000 mountain getaway. I'd even picked out the color stain for the deck: cedar ember, the kind that glows gold at sunset. I called my best guy, Lucas Ramirez, a loyal contractor with more tattoos than patience, and told him to clear his Saturday. We're going up to Pine Ridge, I said. Got a fixer-upper with potential. Lucas grunted. Boss, potential usually means money pit. Maybe, I said, tossing my last clean duffel bag into my truck. But it's my money pit. We left Denver at dawn, coffee steaming in paper cups, tools rattling in the back seat like restless ghosts. As the city faded, the air turned sharper, cleaner. Pine Ridge was one of those Colorado mountain towns that looked like a postcard until you realized half the houses were Airbnbs and the other half were owned by people escaping divorces. Fitting right. The 2-hour drive wound higher into the forest. Pines crowded the road and patches of sunlight flickered like strobe lights through the branches. I kept thinking about how I'd build a wraparound porch, maybe even a fire pit down by the creek. My first real home since the divorce. My fresh start. And then I saw it. Lucas was mid-sentence about lumber prices when I slammed the brakes so hard his coffee splashed across the dashboard. What the? There are cars, I said, voice tight. In the driveway. 3 of them. A silver Subaru, a beat-up Ford Ranger, and because the universe has a sense of humor, a white Lexus SUV with a Live Laugh Love sticker on the back window. I stared. The cabin didn't look abandoned at all. The porch had fresh paint. Curtains fluttered in the windows. Children's bikes leaned against the fence like they'd just finished a joyride. Lucas blinked. Boss, thought you said no tenants." "I did," I muttered, grabbing the manila folder with my deed. I walked up the path, crunching gravel under my boots. The air smelled of pine, wood, smoke, and something cooking. My kitchen. Before I could knock, the door swung open. She stood there like she'd been rehearsing the scene for years. Platinum blonde ponytail athleisure outfit that probably cost more than my old truck, and that smug little half-smile people get when they think rules don't apply to them. "Can I help you?" she asked, like I was delivering flyers. "Yeah," I said, forcing a polite tone. "This is my property. Bought it at the county auction 3 months ago." She tilted her head, pretending to examine the deed I held out. Then she laughed, a dry, condescending sound that made my hands twitch. "Oh, sweetie," she said. "We've been living here for over a year. Adverse possession. You might want to look that up." The smell of stew drifted out the door, my door. "Good luck with that eviction," she added, and shut it in my face. For 10 full seconds I just stood there blinking. My heart thudded somewhere behind my ribs, equal parts fury and disbelief. I'd bought this place legally, paid taxes, got title insurance. Yet somehow this stranger thought she could claim it because she'd squatted long enough. Lucas looked like he was watching a slow-motion train wreck. "Boss," he said carefully. "You, okay?" "No," I said, staring at the closed door. But she's about to wish she wasn't either. I knocked again, harder this time. The door opened a crack, and I saw another face. A lanky guy with patchy facial hair and the kind of eyes that looked half awake, half stoned. "Ma'am," I said evenly, "I need to see documentation proving you have the right to be here." The woman, Kendra, as I later learned, smiled with theatrical sweetness. "Oh, honey, I don't need to prove anything. We're the residents. You're the trespasser." Then she turned to the guy. "Zane, call the sheriff. Tell him some man's harassing us again." The kid grinned and started dialing. Within 20 minutes, a county sheriff's cruiser rumbled up the gravel drive. My pulse eased until I saw the deputy step out. Deputy Carl Dwyer, late 40s small-town swagger, and that easy familiarity of someone who's been to one too many HOA potlucks. He walked straight to Kendra and hugged her. "Carl, thank God," Kendra said, voice quivering. He showed up screaming about deeds and trying to get inside. "My kids are terrified." I opened my mouth to protest, but Carl raised a hand. "Sir, step back." "Officer," I said, through gritted teeth, "I'm the legal owner. I have the deed right here. County auction, clear title." He glanced at the papers for half a second. "Even if you did buy it, Colorado's got strong tenant protections. You can't just show up and harass people living somewhere." "They're not tenants," I snapped. "They're squatters." "That's a civil matter," he said flatly. "Take it up with the court." Kendra burst into tears, Oscar-worthy, full shaking shoulders and gasping breaths. "I'm so scared," she sobbed. "He said he was going to take our home." The deputy's face hardened. "Sir, I'm going to need you to leave this property immediately. Any further contact and I'll arrest you for harassment." And just like that, I was the criminal. The smell of wood smoke drifted from the chimney of the house I legally owned while I stood there in the cold, holding a deed that apparently meant nothing. Lucas muttered, "Boss, this is messed up." "Messed up," I said, climbing into the truck. "Lucas, this is war." As we rolled down the mountain, I caught one last glimpse of Kendra on the porch, waving at the deputy like the Queen of Pine Ridge. Her kids, teenage girl, scruffy son, watched me drive away with smug little smirks. That night, sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing there, smirking, daring me to challenge her. I pulled up Colorado property law at 3 a.m., scrolling through every statute on squatters' rights. Adverse possession, the legal loophole that parasites like her love to abuse, required 18 continuous years of open hostile occupation with taxes paid. She'd said 1 year. She'd overplayed her hand. The next morning I started making calls. County clerk, tax assessor, utility company. Bit by bit the picture formed. Utilities connected 8 months ago. Tax exemption. Fraudulent application filed under a fake address. And then I hit the jackpot. One local tipster mentioned Kendra ran a mountain retreat Airbnb for tourists. I searched online and found it instantly: Timberline Getaway Cozy Cabin in Pine Ridge. Photos of my cabin, my deck, my fireplace, all captioned with cheery lines like, "Perfect for families and host Kendra Superhost since 2022. She'd been renting my property for $175 a night while I was paying storage rent for my tools in Denver. The fury burned cold this time, not hot. Cold fury gets things done. I screenshotted everything, called a lawyer friend for a referral, and by noon I was sitting across from Ava Chen, a former federal prosecutor turned real estate litigator. Her office smelled like coffee and victory. After I laid out the story, Ava leaned back, eyebrows raised. "You've got yourself a live one," she said. "Fraud, tax evasion, false homestead claim, illegal rental, the whole buffet. She's playing the victim on Facebook," I said. "Has the sheriff believing I'm some investor trying to evict her kids?" Ava smirked. "Then let's make the truth louder." She explained the plan: gather proof of ownership document every statement Kendra made, file an emergency injunction to stop any income from the illegal Airbnb, and quietly report her to the IRS for unreported rental revenue. "Fraudsters always leave a trail," Ava said. "You just have to follow the smell of desperation." That night, I did just that. At 10 p.m., I parked outside the cabin in my truck, engine off, camera ready. Through the windows, I watched Kendra hosting guests, laughing, serving wine, showing them her mountain retreat. Every click of my camera shutter was another nail in her coffin. When I finally drove home, the mountain wind howled through the trees, but it didn't sound lonely anymore. It sounded like justice on its way. If you've never been publicly branded as a villain by people who don't know you, count yourself lucky. I woke up that Monday to 67 Facebook notifications, all dripping with moral outrage. The post came from the Pine Ridge Community Group, the digital heart of the town's gossip machine. It read, "A greedy Denver investor is trying to evict a single mother and her 2 kids from their longtime home in Pine Ridge. They cared for the property after the elderly owner passed away, and now this man shows up waving papers and threats. Please share before this family is left homeless." Below it were pictures of my cabin framed perfectly to look rustic and humble. And there she was, Kendra, hair messy, just so, holding a tissue in one hand and her daughter Haley in the other. The caption under the photo read, "All we want is to live in peace." By lunchtime, I'd been called everything from human garbage to corporate scum. Someone even posted my contracting business page telling people to leave one-star reviews. Within an hour they had. Lucas called, voice tight. Boss, you see the post. Folks are saying you harass women and threaten families. I groaned, rubbing my temples. Yeah, welcome to the HOA Court of Public Opinion. Because of course this wasn't just any small town. It was one governed by the Pine Ridge Meadows Homeowners Association, a bureaucratic hydra of self-righteous retirees, part-time yoga coaches, and one woman who proudly listed neighborhood integrity as her full-time job. Her name was Barbara Kent, the HOA president, Kendra's best friend. Barbara wasted no time fanning the flames. By that afternoon, she'd posted an official HOA statement. Pine Ridge Meadows stands firmly with the Malloy family during this illegal and heartless attempt to steal their home. Our HOA supports ethical ownership and tenant protection. Ethical ownership. From people who paved over streams to build tennis courts. I didn't even live within the HOA boundaries, but that didn't stop them from inserting themselves into my property dispute like moral referees. That night, my email inbox flooded with messages, reporters, online activists, even a mountain rights nonprofit, asking if I'd like to reconsider my actions before legal escalation. I almost laughed. Reconsider owning what I legally paid for. Instead, I decided to go quiet and strategic. Ava, my attorney, called with that same icy calm she always had. Don't post, don't comment. Let them hang themselves, she said. The more noise they make, the easier it'll be to prove malice and defamation later. Defamation, I asked. Oh, absolutely, she said, voice sharp. You're a licensed contractor with public listings. Every lie they post about you harming families is measurable financial damage. Screenshots everything. That became my nightly ritual, scrolling through social media, screenshotting every hateful comment, every call for a boycott. Some posts were almost poetic in their stupidity. He's probably from California buying up mountain homes, one wrote. Another said, people like him don't belong here. It's funny how quickly people can convince themselves they're heroes while destroying someone they've never met. But things didn't stop online. The next day, while driving through town to grab coffee, I noticed eyes following me, not curious, but hostile. Pine Ridge had about 2,000 residents, and apparently half of them now thought I was Satan with a contractor's license. At the cafe, the barista refused to serve me. We don't support what you're doing, she said flatly. I stared at her name tag, Mandy. You mean owning my property, exploiting families, she snapped. I walked out coffeeless and shaking my head. Meanwhile, Kendra wasn't just playing the victim, she was monetizing it. A GoFundMe appeared, help the Malloys keep their home. Her goal, $10,000 for legal defense. Within 48 hours, she'd raised nearly $7,500. I forwarded the link to Ava. Her reply came 10 minutes later, Ava perfect. Fraudulent fundraising. IRS will love that. While she worked the legal angle, I dug into Kendra's history. Public records showed 3 previous addresses, each one in a different Colorado county, each followed by lawsuits for unpaid rent or property damage. One landlord in Boulder even left a comment on a news article about her. She destroyed my cabin and called the cops on me when I tried to evict her. Pattern. That's what Ava kept saying. Courts love patterns. But Kendra's real genius wasn't in breaking rules, it was in convincing others to break them for her. She had this magnetic ability to make people feel like they were part of a noble cause. The HOA ate it up. Barbara, the president, scheduled a community meeting about property fairness in Pine Ridge. The flyer had a smiling stock photo family overlaid with the words, "No more outsiders taking our homes." I nearly choked when I saw it. Outsiders, I'd lived in Colorado my whole life. Lucas wanted to crash the meeting, but Ava stopped us. Let them talk, she said. We'll need the transcripts later. And talk they did. Someone secretly recorded the whole thing and sent it to me, probably a quiet sympathizer who smelled the BS. The recording opened with Barbara introducing Kendra like a guest speaker at a charity gala. She's a mother, a caretaker, and a hero, fighting for justice against corporate greed. Then Kendra launched into her story, tears flowing on cue. I cared for Mr. Briggs before he passed. I cleaned, cooked, made sure he wasn't alone. When he died, the house sat empty. I thought, why not keep his memory alive? But then this man, this stranger, shows up and threatens my kids. The audience gasped in unison. You could practically hear the torches lighting. I played that recording 3 times, jaw tightening each round. Because she wasn't just lying, she was rewriting history, turning me into a villain while posing as some mountain Mother Teresa. Ava, however, was delighted. Perfect, she said. She just admitted to occupying the property without legal permission and to deriving income from it, on record. That's a confession. Still, I couldn't shake the anger. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about reputation, dignity, the way small-town gossip could destroy you faster than any legal system. The next morning, I drove up to Pine Ridge again, ignoring Ava's warning to stay low. I needed to see the place. Needed to remind myself what I was fighting for. When I arrived, the cabin looked even more like a stranger's home. New flower pots on the porch, wind chimes clinking a chalkboard sign that read, "Welcome to Timberline Retreat." It hit me harder than before. They hadn't just stolen my property. They'd stolen my identity. Then, as if scripted by some cosmic prankster, Kendra walked out onto the porch with a cup of coffee, phone in hand, live streaming to her Facebook audience. "There he is again," she said, camera turning toward me. "This man's been stalking us for days. Please everyone pray for my kid's safety." I froze, jaw clenched, realizing she was baiting me for content. I smiled thinly, waved to the camera, and said just one thing: "See you in court, Kendra." Then I got back into my truck and drove off, her fake tears echoing through the mountain air. By the time I reached town again, my phone buzzed with a text from Ava. "We've got something." County records just flagged her homestead exemption as fraudulent. She claimed the same primary residence and filed taxes from another address. That's felony-level misrepresentation. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. The HOA might have the crowd and Kendra might have her performance, but I had something they couldn't fake: proof. It wasn't just about property anymore. It was about exposing a system that protected the loudest liar instead of the rightful owner. And as the sun dipped behind the Rockies, painting the sky in bruised oranges and purples, I made myself a promise: I wasn't just getting my cabin back. I was going to take down everyone who helped her steal it. Ava always said revenge works best when it's neatly formatted and filed before 5 p.m. on a weekday. That Monday morning, she slid a stack of documents across her desk with the calm precision of a sniper chambering a round. "Everything you need to ruin her week," she said. On top was an emergency injunction petition, essentially a legal grenade designed to freeze every dollar Kendra was making from my property. Below that, a formal cease and desist order for the illegal Airbnb and an affidavit to the county tax board citing fraud in her homestead exemption. I stared at the pages, still half in disbelief that this circus was my life. "So we're going nuclear," Ava smiled. "Oh honey, we're going thermonuclear. We filed everything that afternoon." I swear I could hear the paperwork hit Kendra's world like thunder. 2 days later, her GoFundMe was suspended for irregular activity. By Wednesday, the county clerk had flagged her tax records. And on Friday morning, a big red "listing suspended" banner appeared across her Airbnb page. The silence on her Facebook felt delicious, but of course the calm didn't last. By Saturday evening, Kendra went live again, this time crying about government corruption and corporate intimidation. Her post racked up thousands of shares. Lucas watched beside me in my truck, shaking his head. "Boss, she's a professional victim." "Not for long," I said. "We just need her to make one mistake." It didn't take long. That same week, Ava received an anonymous envelope. Inside, a handwritten complaint Kendra had filed with the county inspector. It accused the new owner, me, of structural neglect and dangerous living conditions endangering tenants. The nerve. Ava smirked. Perfect. She's now admitted in writing she's occupying property she doesn't own. Still, we needed more. Legal firepower is nothing without evidence. So we went hunting. Our first stop was Murphy's Lumber and Supply, a dusty hardware store run by a man who'd probably been forged from oak himself. Frank Murphy. "Yeah, I know her," he said, wiping grease on his jeans. "Bought $300 worth of supplies 6 months ago. Said her insurance payout was coming any day." He pulled up the receipt. The purchases were all for my cabin's dimensions: lumber, sage green paint deck screws. He even remembered Zane, her son, bragging about fixing up the Airbnb. Ava took photos of every receipt. "This, my friend," she said, "is motive, means, and money trail." Our next visit was the Mountain View Diner. The owner, Lisa Rodriguez, poured us burnt coffee and rolled her eyes the moment we said Kendra's name. "That woman conned half this town," she said. "Came in twice a week saying her mother was dying. We gave her free meals. Later found out she was buying steak dinners at Walmart with food stamps." Ava jotted notes like a crime novelist. "Pattern of deceit, emotional manipulation, fraudulent charity claims." She's practically writing our opening statement. I spent that night compiling everything: photos, receipts, witness statements, every fake Facebook post. The pile looked absurd, hundreds of pages proving one simple truth: Kendra Malloy was a professional scam artist. But Sunday morning delivered an unexpected gift. Ava called, voice sharp with excitement. "Jake, you sitting down, I'm in my truck," I said. "What's up?" She filed her 2024 taxes yesterday. "Okay, She claimed your cabin as her primary residence again. Same exemption, same lie. But the address listed on her driver's license, a double-wide trailer in El Paso County. That's 2 simultaneous homestead claims. Congratulations, you just caught her committing felony tax fraud. For a moment I didn't speak. The mountain wind whipped against the windows, almost cheering. How bad is felony tax fraud? I asked finally. Ava grinned. 5 years minimum up to 20 if the amount exceeds 10,000. She's hit the jackpot. That night I cracked open a beer and watched the sunset bleed orange over the Rockies. For the first time since this nightmare began, I actually laughed. But Kendra wasn't laughing. At 8:43 p.m., my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered, and her voice came through the line like acid. "You think you're clever," she hissed. "You're ruining my life." "I'm not ruining it," I said evenly. "I'm just showing people the parts you tried to hide. You'll regret this. I know people in this town. People who can make problems disappear." "Funny," I said. "So do I." And I hung up. Ava insisted we report the threat, so we did. Deputy Dwyer took the statement with all the enthusiasm of a man reading parking tickets. His jaw tightened when he saw who it was from, though. "You've got no proof she meant harm," he muttered. I smiled thinly. "Maybe not, but I've got proof she's a fraud. And when the IRS and county investigators are done with her, she'll wish threats were her biggest problem." Dwyer scowled. "You're playing with fire, Morrison." "Good," I said, turning to leave. "Because I'm done freezing." By midweek, the dominoes started to wobble. The county assessor froze Kendra's tax records pending investigation. Her Airbnb reviews vanished overnight. The HOA meeting scheduled by Barbara Kent was abruptly postponed. And then something remarkable happened. One of Barbara's board members reached out to me privately. His message read, "Jake, I don't want to be part of this anymore." Kendra lied. She told us the old man gave her the house in a will, but county clerk says there's no record. I can testify if needed. I nearly dropped my phone. Finally, a crack in her armor. Ava was ecstatic. "We'll file for summary judgment within weeks. Once we have an affidavit from that board member, the civil court will issue an eviction order." But as the legal net tightened, Kendra did what cornered predators always do. She doubled down. Friday morning, I woke up to a call from my bank. "Mr. Morrison," the rep said cautiously, "someone filed a complaint claiming your property purchase was fraudulent. We're required to freeze certain assets pending review." My pulse spiked. "Who filed it?" She hesitated. "A Miss Kendra Malloy. She claims you wrote bad checks related to the sale." Ava nearly broke her pen when I told her. "That's criminal false reporting. We can use this." "Can she actually freeze my money temporarily?" Ava said. "But by the time this is over, she'll be the one explaining herself to the IRS, the county, and possibly the FBI." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. "Then let's give them a reason to knock." We did exactly that. Ava submitted an official complaint to the Colorado Department of Revenue attaching every fraudulent document Kendra had filed. We also sent a detailed report to the IRS Criminal Investigations Division, complete with Airbnb screenshots, bank statements, and those juicy double-address filings. Ava's grin could have melted snow. "You realize what this means, right? Once the feds start sniffing, she won't know which agency to panic about first." And panic she did. 2 days later, she posted a rambling video titled, "The Truth They Don't Want You to Know." Half rant, half conspiracy theory, it accused the county of working with corrupt investors to steal land from hard-working single mothers. Her eyes darted wildly, mascara-smudged voice rising with each word. Lucas watched the clip and whistled. "Boss, she's unraveling." "Good," I said, "because the next move isn't mine." That same evening, a black SUV rolled up to the cabin. 2 state investigators stepped out. Their jackets bore gold lettering Colorado Department of Revenue Tax Enforcement Division. They spent 4 hours inside. When they left, they carried 2 boxes of documents, a desktop computer, and Kendra's fake smile. The next morning, Pine Ridge woke up to a new headline in the Mountain Gazette: "State Investigators Raid Cabin in Tax Fraud Probe." The article quoted anonymous sources, confirming the target was Kendra Malloy. Even Barbara Kent, the HOA president, suddenly changed her tune, releasing a statement about misunderstandings and waiting for legal clarification. Lucas called me, laughing so hard he could barely talk. "Boss, they're eating each other alive on Facebook." Barbara unfriended Kendra mid-live stream. For the first time in months, I let myself breathe. We weren't finished far from it, but the tide had finally turned. That night, standing at the edge of my driveway, I looked up at the stars, slicing through the crisp Colorado darkness. The mountain air felt cleaner, sharper, like justice sharpening its blade. Kendra had built her empire on lies, and piece by piece, I was dismantling it. But even I didn't realize yet how deep her rot went. Because buried behind those fake tax forms and sweet Facebook posts was something darker, something the state would soon uncover, that turned my property dispute into a full-blown criminal case. And when it did, the words tax fraud would start to look like a parking ticket compared to what she'd really done. If you've ever wondered how fast a liar can implode once the truth gets oxygen, about 72 hours, that's how long it took for Kendra's perfect facade to crumble once the state investigators showed up at my cabin. Monday morning, the Mountain Gazette ran a front-page headline, "Pine Ridge Mom Under Investigation for Tax Fraud and Illegal Rentals." The article included photos of the state agents hauling out boxes from my cabin and a quote from a local source, probably Barbara Kent from the HOA, trying to distance herself from Kendra faster than a cat from a bathtub. The HOA had no knowledge of Miss Malloy's activities, she said, all innocence and pearl-clutching. We were misled. Sure, Barbara. Just last week you were hashtagging number Justice for Kendra. The reaction online was instant. All those armchair activists who'd accused me of being a corporate monster suddenly went silent. Some even deleted their comments. Others tried to pretend they'd always had doubts. Cowards move quick when the wind shifts. Lucas called me that morning, voice full of gleeful disbelief. Boss, she's trending. Not in a good way. People are calling her the Airbnb bandit of Pine Ridge. I couldn't help but smile. Good. Let's make sure the IRS sees the same nickname. Ava already had. She'd sent every article to the Revenue Department's Fraud Division with a note that simply read, "Public corroboration of ongoing misrepresentation." That woman was terrifying in the best possible way. By noon, Kendra's social media turned into a meltdown in slow motion. First, she posted a 10-minute live video from the passenger seat of her SUV, sobbing and yelling about being targeted by powerful men. Then, when that didn't land, she went for the classic pivot, claiming mental health issues, trauma from abusive landlords, and PTSD from systemic corruption. But her followers weren't buying it this time. The comment section was a battlefield. Wait, didn't you say you own that house? If it's yours, why is the IRS involved? Lady, stop renting other people's stuff. Within hours, her GoFundMe was completely deactivated with a polite but devastating note from the platform. This campaign violated our terms of service. It was glorious. Still, Ava warned me to stay cautious. She's dangerous when cornered, she said. Fraudsters with nowhere to run get creative. She wasn't wrong. That night, around 1130, my phone started buzzing non-stop texts from unknown numbers, all filled with threats. Hope you enjoy your cabin before it burns down. Dead men don't collect rent. I took screenshots, sent them to Ava, and tried to sleep. But a few hours later, I woke to a call from Lucas. Boss, he said, his voice trembling, you need to get up here. Now. The drive up the mountain felt endless. The sky was still dark, the kind of pre-dawn gray that makes everything look like a crime scene. When I reached the cabin, Lucas was standing in the driveway, face pale. The windows, every single one, had been smashed. The front door hung crooked, its hinges torn apart. Inside, chaos reigned. Cabinets torn from walls, faucets broken, the living room flooded ankle deep. Someone had spray painted across the interior wall. Thief. Kendra and her son Zane had clearly gone nuclear. Lucas kicked a piece of splintered wood. She did this, boss. I saw her car last night. She and the kid were parked up the road around midnight. I clenched my fists, staring at the ruin of the place I'd been rebuilding piece by piece. She just turned a civil case into a criminal one. We called the sheriff's office, but when Deputy Dwyer arrived, the look on his face was almost apologetic. Jake, he said carefully, I can't prove she did this. I pointed at the fresh graffiti, at the beer cans with Zane's fingerprints, at the broken GoPro camera she'd clearly knocked over trying to destroy evidence. You don't need to prove it. I've got everything on my security backup. Video timestamps, faces. For once, Dwyer didn't argue. Send it to the county investigator. I'll file the report. By evening, the footage was in the hands of both the sheriff's office and Ava. And when we watched it together that night in her office, she actually whistled. Look at that idiot, she said, freezing the frame. He's waving to the camera while smashing the drywall. Zane Malloy, 25, jobless high as a kite, grinning like a man proud of his own stupidity. It was cinematic proof beyond argument. Ava leaned back, satisfied. We'll press charges first thing tomorrow. Criminal mischief, property destruction, trespassing, and harassment. Then her expression changed, focused, sharp. But Jake, look at this part. She rewound the footage to a frame where Zane swung his sledgehammer into the bedroom wall, punching through plaster and insulation. Behind the broken wall was a small cavity, a hidden compartment. What's that? I asked. She zoomed in. Inside the cavity, wrapped in plastic, were stacks of papers. When we pulled them out later, the contents made my blood run cold: medical forms, bank statements, and legal documents belonging to Walter Briggs, the previous owner of the cabin, the man who'd supposedly died of natural causes. Except these documents told a different story. They showed Walter had given Kendra temporary caregiving rights months before his death. There were power of attorney papers badly forged with shaky signatures that didn't match his earlier records. And one more thing, a life insurance policy naming Kendra Malloy as the sole beneficiary. $40,000. Collected 2 weeks after Walter's death. Ava's voice went deadly quiet. Jake, she didn't just squat in his house. She killed him for it. The room felt smaller suddenly. My chest tightened. Are you saying I'm saying this is elder abuse, financial exploitation, maybe even homicide? If she forged this and Walter died while under her care, this isn't a property dispute anymore. It's a criminal investigation. The next morning, Ava contacted the FBI's Denver field office, and by evening 2 agents arrived at her office. Their names were Special Agent Sophia Reyes and Agent Derek Cole, and they carried that calm, dangerous professionalism that only comes with federal badges. We handed them the documents. Reyes read in silence for several minutes, her brow furrowing deeper with each page. This matches a pattern we've been tracking, she finally said. Elderly men, isolated properties in rural Colorado counties, sudden deaths, forged signatures, insurance payouts. We believe she's done this before. How many times? Ava asked. Reyes looked grim. At least 3. My stomach dropped. 3 men. She nodded. All between 70 and 80 years old. All died of supposed natural causes, and all had connections to a woman fitting Kendra's description, different names, same M.O. I leaned forward. You're telling me I didn't just buy a foreclosed property. I bought a crime scene. Agent Reyes didn't deny it. Over the next few days, the investigation accelerated like a train with no brakes. The agents subpoenaed Kendra's bank records, insurance payouts, and medical correspondence tied to Walter Briggs. What they found painted a chilling picture. Medication orders inconsistent with his prescriptions, sudden withdrawals from his accounts, and a $40,000 life insurance check deposited into her account days after his death. The FBI called it financial homicide. Meanwhile, Kendra and her son were still living in the cabin like nothing had happened, posting filtered photos of peaceful mountain mornings, while federal agents built a murder case beneath their feet. By the weekend, the news broke. The Gazette headline read, FBI investigating Pine Ridge woman in multi-county elder fraud scheme. The community's tone changed overnight. The same people who'd spat on my name at the cafe were now whispering apologies. Even Barbara Kent publicly resigned from the HOA, citing emotional exhaustion. But I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Because if Kendra was capable of killing an old man for $40,000, what would she do to the person threatening to expose her? That question would be answered sooner than I expected, and in a way I could never have imagined. You can tell when a predator realizes they're being hunted. It's the sudden stillness, the way noise disappears from their world. That's what Pine Ridge felt like after the FBI showed up. For the first time in weeks, Kendra Malloy wasn't broadcasting live videos or posting conspiracy threads. The mountain was quiet, too quiet. I should have felt relief, but quiet from people like her never means peace. It means plotting. Special Agent Sophia Reyes had told me, stay alert. Fraudsters with a cornered ego often turn violent before surrendering. She wasn't exaggerating. 3 days after the investigation went public, I woke up to the sharp stench of gasoline. My eyes shot open heart, slamming in my chest. The smell wasn't faint, it was everywhere. I grabbed my flashlight and opened my apartment door. The concrete hallway glistened. Someone had poured fuel right outside my unit. My truck parked beneath the window had a rag sticking out of its gas tank. My hands shook as I dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice was calm, too calm. Sir, stay inside and wait for officers. When firefighters arrived minutes later, the rag was already smoldering. They got it out before it ignited, but the message was clear. This wasn't random. This was a warning. The officers dusted for prints, none clear enough. But the security camera from the parking lot caught a grainy figure, someone tall wearing a hoodie, limping slightly. Zane Malloy. Ava and Agent Reyes met me at the county sheriff's office that afternoon. Reyes flipped through the report, her jaw tightening. They're desperate, she said. This confirms everything. We'll move her to federal watch. Watch, I repeated. She just tried to burn my building down. We're building a murder case, Reyes said quietly. We need her to act just a little bit more. That little bit more came faster than anyone expected. 2 nights later, Lucas called whispering like he'd seen a ghost. "Boss, she's at the cabin, lights on. Looks like she's cleaning something. Cleaning what can't tell, but she's wearing gloves and burning papers in the fireplace." I was already halfway out the door. When I pulled into the gravel road that led to my property, the night was silent except for the faint crackle of flames. My headlights swept across the porch, and there she was. Kendra hunched over a metal bin, feeding it papers one sheet at a time. The orange glow lit her face like a demon out of a campfire story. "Evening, Kendra," I called, stepping out. She froze, then slowly turned. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice trembling between fear and fury. Funny, I was about to say the same thing. "You're ruining my life," she hissed. "You don't understand what it's like for women like me." "Stop," I snapped. "Don't play the victim. Not after what you did to Walter Briggs." For a heartbeat, her mask slipped, just a flicker like a snake blinking before striking. "You think you know everything," she sneered. "That old man was going to die anyway. He wanted company. I gave him that. And took his money," I said. She smiled faintly. "And his house." The audacity made me laugh, a harsh sound that startled even me. "You're not clever, Kendra. You're sloppy. You left his insurance papers in my wall." Her face went still. Then slowly she exhaled. "Guess I'll have to deal with that." Something metallic glinted in her hand. It took my brain half a second to register a small pistol. Cheap, reckless. "Back up," she said, voice shaking. "I didn't mean for it to go this far, but you keep pushing me." "Kendra," I said, raising my hands, "think about what happens next. You pull that trigger, and you don't walk away from this. The FBI's already watching you. Every call, every move." Her hand trembled. "They won't believe you. Everyone thinks I'm a victim." "Not anymore," I said softly. "They saw the footage. They know." She blinked rapidly, eyes darting toward the dark woods behind me like she was calculating her escape, and then headlights flared behind her. A black SUV screeched to a stop, doors flying open. Reyes and 2 federal agents stepped out, weapons drawn. Kendra Malloy dropped the firearm. Kendra spun, panic surging across her face. For a moment she looked almost childlike, terrified, cornered. Then she tossed the gun into the dirt and fell to her knees. "I didn't kill anyone," she screamed. "He was sick. He wanted me there." Reyes approached, cuffs glinting in her hands. "Then you can explain that to a judge." As they hauled Kendra to her feet, she glared at me over her shoulder. "You think you've won," she spat. "You don't even know what you're part of." Her words hung in the night like poison. Later at the sheriff's office, Reyes told me what they'd found. The papers she'd been burning weren't random. They were financial ledgers and phone logs connecting her to 3 other elderly victims in Colorado and Wyoming. Each had signed suspicious care agreements weeks before their deaths. Each had life insurance payouts listing fake relatives as beneficiaries. But that wasn't the worst of it. Reyes set a folder on the table. "We found her encrypted drive," she said. She kept digital records of everything: photos, emails, banking trails. She wasn't just freelancing. She was part of a small criminal network that targeted elderly homeowners. I sat back, cold creeping through my chest. "A network, yes," Reyes said grimly. "She learned the playbook from a group of traveling con artists. They'd move from county to county, posing as caregivers, nurses, even church volunteers. Once the victim died, they'd claim residency, forge wills, and flip the properties to cash buyers." "And my cabin?" I asked quietly. "Your cabin was supposed to be her 4th flip," Reyes said. "But when Walter died unexpectedly, the county moved faster than she expected and put it up for tax auction. You bought it before she could fake a transfer deed. So I ruined the pattern," I murmured. "You exposed it," she corrected. "Without your purchase, the others would have gone unnoticed." The room went silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. After Kendra's arrest, the media frenzy reignited, but this time I wasn't the villain. Reporters wanted interviews. Neighbors apologized in shaky voices. Even Barbara Kent from the HOA showed up at my construction site with cookies and crocodile tears. I feel just awful about everything she said, eyes wide behind her pearl glasses. "We had no idea she was that kind of person." I smiled thinly. "No worries, Barbara. Maybe next time verify before you crucify." Her cheeks flushed. She turned and left without another word. Over the next few weeks, federal agents pieced together Kendra's crimes like a twisted puzzle. Turns out she had aliases in 3 states: Kendra Briggs, Kendall Harper, and Nora Malone. Each identity linked to a different elderly man who had died under mysterious but natural circumstances. The discovery rocked Colorado. The press dubbed her the Widow of Pine Ridge. But the FBI wasn't done. They arrested Zane, too, charged with property destruction, accessory to fraud, and attempted arson. When they took him, he reportedly told them Mom said we were the victims. Delusion runs deep. Through it all, Agent Reyes kept me updated. The investigation expanded, uncovering bank accounts in Nevada, a burner phone tied to forged insurance claims, and 2 witnesses from a nursing home who remembered Kendra visiting patients under fake credentials. The scale was staggering. What started as a squatter dispute had become a multi-state fraud and homicide case. Still, part of me couldn't shake the personal anger, the sheer violation. She'd used my property, my life, as her stage. When the FBI finished processing the cabin, I returned for the first time since the arrest. The air was sharp, with pine and ashes, but it smelled clean again, free of gasoline lies and manipulation. Inside, the walls were stripped bare. Evidence tags hung from corners like sterile reminders of the chaos that had lived here. In the bedroom, sunlight pooled across the floorboards. I stood there for a long time, listening to the hum of wind through the broken glass. Then I whispered to the empty room, "You're free now, Walter." That night, back in town, Reyes called with one final revelation. "Jake," she said, "we recovered a voice memo from Kendra's encrypted drive, dated 3 days before her arrest." She played it over the phone. Kendra's voice crackled, ragged but defiant. "He thinks he's won, but he doesn't know I kept the originals. They'll never find all of them. Not before I'm gone." Reyes sighed. "We don't know what originals means yet. Could be documents, could be accomplices. But we'll find out." I stared out the window at the dark horizon. "Whatever it is," I said, "I'll be ready." Because deep down I knew this story wasn't over. Every liar leaves ghosts behind, and the mountain wasn't done whispering yet. By the time the FBI finished mapping Kendra's network, Pine Ridge wasn't just gossiping, they were hiding. People who'd once defended her now whispered about the murders in the mountains, and parents warned their kids to stay away from her old cabin. The local Facebook groups that had mocked me weeks earlier suddenly filled with posts like, "We always suspected something was off about her." Right, sure you did. But the feds weren't celebrating yet. Agent Reyes made it clear, "We've got evidence for fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy. But if she murdered those men, and there are 4, not 3, we need a confession or physical proof before trial." The 4th name hit me like a punch. Earl Wainwright, 78, a retired train engineer from Wyoming. Same MO, met Kendra at a grief support group, transferred his will 6 months later, dead 3 after that. Kendra had reinvented herself as Nora Malone that time. The woman was a chameleon wrapped in Lululemon. "She's in custody," I said. "What more do you need?" Reyes leaned across the table. "Kendra's good at surviving. She'll plead diminished capacity, claim manipulation, maybe even blame Zane. We need her on record, admitting intent." "How do you get that?" Reyes' smile was cold. "You bait her." 2 weeks later, Kendra's attorney filed a motion for pretrial release. The judge, pressured by the defense's nonviolent offender argument, allowed her temporary house arrest bracelet monitor, restricted movement, weekly check-ins. I was furious. Ava was livid. Reyes, however, just nodded. "Perfect," she said. "Let's end this on our terms." The plan was simple, in theory, and terrifying in practice. The FBI knew Kendra was addicted to attention. She couldn't stand losing the narrative. So they'd tempt her with one last stage, a town hall meeting on property rights and corruption in Pine Ridge, live-streamed to local news. Reyes wanted me there, front row, playing the role of the man who'd ruined her life. "She won't resist the spotlight," Reyes explained. "If she cracks, it'll be public and admissible." I hesitated. "You're using me as bait." Reyes didn't blink. "You're the only person she'll perform for." The week leading up to the meeting was eerie. Pine Ridge buzzed with half excitement, half fear. Flyers went up at gas stations, community forum, housing rights and justice. Beneath, in small print, featuring speaker Kendra Malloy, Barbara Kent, freshly dethroned from her HOA throne, tried to slither back into relevance by hosting it at the community center. She told the Gazette, "We're about healing." "Sure, Barbara. Healing through televised trauma." The night of the event, the air was razor cold. The community hall overflowed with spectators, neighbors, reporters, and the entire FBI disguised as audience members. I sat near the back beside Lucas, who whispered, "Boss, you sure about this?" "No," I said, "but I'm done running from ghosts." At exactly 7:15, Kendra arrived in a wheelchair. Neck brace, arms, sling, and oxygen tank she clearly didn't need. Her son Zane pushed her eyes, darting nervously. She wore a soft cardigan, and that same plastic smile she'd weaponized for years. The crowd murmured in sympathy. Barbara took the microphone first. "We're here tonight to discuss the truth behind the property dispute that divided our town. Miss Malloy has bravely agreed to speak." Kendra rolled to the podium, adjusting her microphone with a trembling hand. Her voice was a delicate whisper, perfectly rehearsed. "I'm here tonight," She began because people like me, single mothers, caretakers, are being crushed by greedy men who think they can buy our homes and our dignity. Applause rippled through the hall, hesitant but real. She dabbed fake tears. When Walter Briggs died, I was the only one there for him. I made sure his last days were filled with love. Then this man, Jake Morrison, bought our home at auction and tried to throw my children into the snow. I could feel my pulse hammering. Every sentence was a lie, but I stayed quiet. Kendra's voice strengthened. And now the FBI claims I'm some kind of criminal. But the real crime is what they're doing to you. They want your land, your homes, your freedom. Right on cue, Agent Reyes stood up from the back row, flashing her badge. Federal Agent Reyes, Mrs. Malloy, since you've brought up the FBI, would you like to explain these? She held up a manila folder and handed copies to the front row. Inside, Kendra's forged power of attorney forms bank withdrawals and insurance payout slips. The audience murmured. Cameras zoomed in. Kendra froze. Then she laughed a high brittle sound. Those papers mean nothing. Walter wanted me to have the house. He loved me. From the center row, a man stood up slowly. Mid-50s, weathered face, grief etched in every line. Colin Briggs, Walter's nephew. Loved you, he said quietly. He was terrified of you. The room went still. Colin held up photos Walter before Kendra, healthy, smiling, and after skeletal, vacant. You drained him, Kendra. His bank accounts, his health, his will to live. Kendra's mask cracked. Her lips curled. He was old, he was dying. You helped him along, Colin roared. Reyes stepped forward, voice steady. Mrs. Malloy, are you admitting to administering medications outside a doctor's supervision? I didn't kill him, she screamed, standing from the wheelchair in a burst of fury. The audience gasped. He was pathetic, clinging to life. I just made it easier. And there it was. The confession landed like a thunderclap. Reyes nodded once. That'll do. She motioned to the agents in the crowd. Kendra Malloy, you are under arrest for the murder of Walter Briggs and for conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and obstruction of justice. As the cuffs clicked shut, Kendra thrashed, screaming. You can't prove anything. You think this ends with me. You have no idea what's coming. But no one listened anymore. The crowd erupted, half in shock, half in applause. Barbara Kent slumped into her chair, face white as chalk. Reporters swarmed. Outside, the cold night air hit like a slap. Lucas clapped me on the shoulder. Boss, you did it. I didn't answer right away. My hands trembled, but not from fear. From relief, the kind that comes after years of being gaslit by an entire town. Justice did it, I finally said. Later, back in my truck, I sat watching the dark silhouette of the mountains. Pine Ridge was quiet again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was peace. Over the following weeks, the dominoes kept falling. Zane confessed to destroying evidence and implicated his mother in 3 other deaths. Investigators recovered remains exhumed for toxicology. Arsenic. Every single time. The trial was brutal, broadcast, live statewide. Kendra tried one last performance, pleading mental illness, claiming voices told her to do it. But juries don't forgive poisoners. The verdict guilty on all counts. Life without parole. When the judge read it, I didn't cheer. I just closed my eyes. Somewhere in the silence, I imagined Walter Briggs smiling free at last. Agent Reyes visited my rebuilt cabin a month later. You planning to sell? She asked. I shook my head. Not yet. It's not just a property anymore. It's proof. Reyes smiled faintly. Of what that the truth doesn't always whisper. Sometimes it roars. She left me standing on the porch, the wind carrying the scent of pine and smoke. The mountains looked endless ancient, like they'd seen every kind of evil and survived it. So would I. That night, as the stars burned above the ridge, I made one last entry in the journal. I'd started the day Kendra slammed the door in my face. They stole my peace, my reputation, and nearly my life. But I took back more than a cabin. I took back my story. And that's something no con artist, no HOA Karen, no liar will ever own again. The mountain was silent. For the first time, it felt like home. When Kendra Malloy was sentenced, the courtroom erupted not with applause, but with something heavier. A collective exhale. Months of tension, fear, and gossip evaporated in one long breath. The Mountain Gazette headline the next morning read, "Widow of Pine Ridge sentenced to life justice for Walter Briggs." It should have felt like victory. And it did for about 5 minutes. But after the adrenaline faded, reality set in. The cabin, my cabin, was a ruin. Broken walls, shattered glass, burned scars, and crime scene tape that flapped in the cold mountain wind. Every nail felt haunted. Every board creaked like it remembered. Still, I went back. The FBI cleared the property, tagging and photographing every inch before handing me the key. Agent Reyes met me in the driveway that morning, her black SUV idling behind her. "You sure you want to see this today?" she asked. "I need to," I said. She nodded once. "Closure isn't a place," she said. "It's a process. But this is where it starts." Inside, the smell of bleach and old smoke hit me hard. The fireplace was bricked shut, sealed after the agents found fragments of burned documents in the ashes. The once cozy living room was stripped bare, walls pockmarked from evidence collection. The kitchen sink hung crooked, full of dust and old water stains, but it was mine again. I walked through, slowly tracing my fingers along the beams. Lucas arrived an hour later with his truck full of tools. "Well," he said, surveying the place, "guess we've got our work cut out for us." I laughed for the first time in months. "You think?" We started that afternoon, ripping out damaged drywall, patching the roof, replacing floorboards. It wasn't glamorous. It was cold, back-breaking, honest work. The kind that reminds you life goes on whether or not the world notices. By week 2, volunteers began showing up. Lisa from the diner brought coffee and sandwiches. Old man Frank from Murphy's Lumber offered to supply wood at cost. Even Deputy Dwyer, once Kendra's lapdog, showed up, one Saturday, hammer in hand and guilt written all over his face. "Didn't see the truth soon enough," he said, not meeting my eyes. "You mind if I help?" I handed him a pair of gloves. "Start with the fence." Word spread fast. Within a month, the cabin wasn't a crime scene anymore, it was a community project. The same town that once branded me a monster now worked side by side to rebuild what they'd helped destroy with their silence. Irony has a wicked sense of timing. As spring melted into summer, the property started to look alive again. The porch was rebuilt, the walls painted a warm cedar brown. I installed new windows that looked out over the pines, and one evening, while fitting a frame in the master bedroom, I found something wedged deep inside the wall cavity, a small tin box sealed with tape. For a moment, my stomach dropped. I thought it might be another ghost from Kendra's past. I opened it carefully. Inside were old photos, Walter Briggs, as a young man smiling beside a classic truck, a wedding picture, and a handwritten note on yellowed stationery. "To whoever owns this house, next take care of the creek. It's where I met the love of my life. If the walls ever feel heavy, open the windows. The mountain will remind you it's still good." I stood there for a long time, staring at the words. The man had written his legacy into the walls, and somehow, even through all the horror that followed it, had survived. That night, I sat on the porch with Lucas, drinking beer as the sun dipped behind the ridge. "You ever think about selling?" he asked. "Not anymore," I said. "This place isn't just mine, it's his too. Feels like we both earned it." Lucas nodded. "Guess that makes it sacred ground." "Yeah," I said, smiling faintly. "Sacred and slightly cursed." We both laughed, but the truth was heavier. The town was healing, but scars don't vanish. They just fade until you forget where they start. By midsummer, the Pine Ridge Council voted to disband the old HOA entirely. Barbara Kent resigned under personal stress, though rumor had it she was quietly being investigated for tampering with community funds. Karma had excellent aim. The new mayor, an ex-forest ranger named Tom Wheeler, visited my property in July. He shook my hand, looked around and said, "Heard you're good with tools. How about helping rebuild the trail bridge near the creek, volunteering me already?" I joked. He smiled. "After what you've been through, you're the only man I trust with a hammer in this county." So I helped. Not for them, at least, not at first. But rebuilding that bridge, plank by plank, became a kind of therapy. The rhythm of hammer strikes and sawdust felt cleaner than paperwork and police reports. Sometimes when I walked that trail alone, I thought about Kendra's last words, "You don't know what you're part of." The FBI had traced 2 of her accomplices, but the others had vanished. Whether they'd been smart or lucky, no one knew. Reyes promised they'd keep digging, but I'd learned not to expect neat endings. Evil rarely travels alone. In late August, the Gazette published a follow-up story, "Pine Ridge Reclaims Its Heart." It painted me as some folk hero, the man who saved the town from corruption. I couldn't read past the headline, "Heroes don't feel this tired." Still, the article drew visitors. Tourists came to see the infamous cabin that started it all. Some wanted selfies. Others just stood quietly as if paying respects. One couple asked if they could rent it for their honeymoon. I laughed so hard, I nearly choked on my coffee. "No rentals," I said. "Not ever again." Instead, I turned the cabin into something different. With Ava's help, I registered it as a nonprofit retreat for victims of real estate fraud and elder exploitation. We called it the Briggs Foundation in honor of Walter. The idea spread faster than I expected. Donations came from across the state, people who'd lost homes, inheritance, or loved ones to scams just like his. At the opening ceremony, Agent Reyes gave a small speech. "This story started with greed," she said, "but it ends with grace." I didn't give a speech. I just stood on the porch as the sun set behind the ridge, watching the crowd of strangers, people united by pain and resilience. Later, as the evening cooled, Reyes joined me. "You ever think about leaving Pine Ridge?" she asked. Sometimes, I admitted. Then I remember leaving once almost cost me everything. The only way to beat ghosts is to live where they died. She smiled. "That's poetic." "I'm a contractor," I said, "not a poet. But maybe the mountain's rubbing off on me." Autumn crept in, slow and golden. The air turned crisp, the forest humming with quiet. On the anniversary of Walter's death, I hiked down to the creek, the same one he'd written about in that note. The water sparkled through fallen leaves, whispering like it always had. I brought a small wooden plaque I'd carved myself, Walter Briggs, 1931-2023. He built a home. We kept it standing. I drove the post into the ground beside the stream, took a step back, and felt something shift in my chest. Closure, maybe, or peace. On my way back, I saw someone waiting by the cabin gate, a teenage girl with red hair wearing a worn jacket. "Can I help you?" I asked. She hesitated, then held out a letter. "You don't know me," she said softly. "I'm Haley, Kendra's daughter." My pulse froze. She looked nothing like her mother. Nervous eyes, trembling hands. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything she did. For what she turned us into. I took the letter. "You don't owe me that," I said gently. "But thank you." She wasn't always like that, she whispered. Something broke in her after my dad left. She said the world owed her. I think she started believing it. Haley looked at the cabin, then back at me. "I'm leaving Colorado. Going to live with my aunt in Oregon. I just needed to see where it all happened before I go." "Take care of yourself," I said. "And don't carry her guilt." She nodded, eyes shining, then walked down the road until the pines swallowed her. When I opened the letter later, it contained only one sentence. "Maybe this place can finally heal someone the way it couldn't heal her." I folded it carefully and placed it beside Walter's note in the tin box. Winter came early that year. Snow fell heavy, muffling the world in white silence. From the porch, the mountains looked peaceful again, as if none of it had ever happened. I poured myself a mug of coffee, sat by the fire, and let the warmth seep into my bones. The storm had passed. The ghosts were quiet. Somewhere deep in the forest, the creek kept running steady, honest, unstoppable, just like truth. And as the fire crackled, I realized something simple but profound. You can't always erase what's been done, but you can build something stronger on its ashes. That's what I'd done. That's what Pine Ridge had done. We rebuilt, we remembered, and we kept the mountain standing. The snow came heavier that winter than anyone in Pine Ridge could remember. By mid-December, the road to my cabin turned into a white corridor of silence, pine branches bending under the weight. Most mornings, I'd shovel a narrow path from the porch to the truck, breath fogging in the air, listening to the creak of settling ice. It was peaceful, the kind of peace I used to think only existed in stories. But peace doesn't mean quiet. It means acceptance. And acceptance came slow. Every time the wind blew through the valley, I still half expected to hear Kendra's voice, slick and self-righteous, claiming what wasn't hers. Sometimes I'd even dream of her walking out of the tree line, that fake smile frozen in place. I'd wake drenched in sweat, heart pounding, until the morning light reminded me she was locked away for life. The Briggs Foundation had taken off faster than I could manage alone. Ava ran the administrative side. Reyes helped connect with law enforcement liaisons, and Lucas volunteered to build cabins for visiting survivors. We'd hosted 3 families by Christmas, each with their own version of the same nightmare. Forged deeds, fake liens, fraudulent HOAs, every story different yet painfully familiar. One afternoon, a woman named Marjorie Lane arrived from Arizona, 65, thin as a rail, with hands that shook when she tried to sign her name on the intake form. "They took my husband's farm," she whispered, said he owed back taxes. He'd been dead 5 years. She'd lost everything, land, home, retirement, because someone filed forged tax liens using a defunct company name. It mirrored Kendra's tactics down to the signature style. "You sure she's in prison?" Marjorie asked. Because this felt practiced. That night I couldn't sleep. Her words gnawed at me. Practiced. What if Kendra wasn't the start of the scam, but the student? The next morning I called Reyes. She sighed when she picked up. "You're not going to let this go, are you? Not when it smells the same," I said. She paused. There was chatter. During interrogation, Kendra hinted at someone called the broker. Supposedly, he handled her fake documents, took a cut from every sale. But we never found him. The broker, I repeated. Sounds like he's still open for business. Reyes promised to dig, but warned me to stay out of it. Let us handle it, Jake. You've done enough. I wanted to believe her, but doing nothing had never been my strong suit. 2 weeks later, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address, just my name typed in neat courier font. Inside was a single photograph my cabin taken from the woods at night. On the back, a scrawled message. Nice foundation. She'd be proud. My stomach turned to ice. I called Reyes immediately. She was silent for a long moment. We'll send a team, she said finally. Keep the letter. Don't touch anything else. By the time the agents arrived, snow had covered the tracks outside. Whoever took that photo knew the area, knew how to vanish fast. The next day, the Briggs Foundation's website went offline. Ava's phone blew up with error codes and login alerts from overseas IP addresses. We'd been hacked. Reyes later confirmed what I already feared: someone had accessed federal case files linked to Kendra's network. Her sealed testimony, her emails, everything. Someone wants her story to live, Reyes muttered grimly. The attacks only made us more determined. Lucas and I doubled down on security motion sensors, cameras, reinforced doors. The townsfolk rallied again, donating money and time to restore what had been damaged. It felt like déjà vu, another battle against invisible hands. But this time we weren't alone. On New Year's Eve, we held the first annual Mountain Vigil, a candlelight gathering to honor victims of property scams and elder abuse. More than 100 people showed up, bundled in coats, their faces glowing in the flickering light. I spoke briefly, voice trembling more than I expected. This mountain saw darkness, I said, but it also saw what happens when people refuse to stay silent. Walter Briggs didn't die for nothing. Kendra's lies didn't bury us, they woke us up. The crowd murmured in agreement. I looked out at the sea of lights, and for the first time Pine Ridge looked united, not by fear or gossip, but by purpose. After the ceremony, a woman in a red parka approached me. You don't know me, she said, her voice barely above the wind, but you helped my father. I frowned. I did, she smiled sadly. He was one of Kendra's victims. Name was Earl Wainwright. You helped catch her. Earl. The fourth man. She pressed a folded letter into my hand. He kept a journal before he died. Said if anyone ever found the truth, he wanted them to have this. When I opened it later, the handwriting was shaky but clear. If you're reading this, it means someone finally saw through her charm. Don't let her kind win. When liars build houses, build truth instead. Brick by brick. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the fire, staring at those words until dawn. Spring came early, and with it more stories. More people reaching out for help. The Briggs Foundation grew faster than any of us expected. We partnered with local lawyers, hosted free legal aid clinics, and built 3 new cabins for victims needing temporary shelter. One of them housed Marjorie for a month. Watching her smile again, the kind of weary, tentative smile that says, maybe, just maybe, hope isn't dead, reminded me why we'd started all this. Ava joked that we were turning Pine Ridge into the most honest town in Colorado. I told her I'd settle for the least corrupt. But every victory carried the shadow of that photograph, the broker, the message. Whoever was behind it hadn't surfaced again, but I knew better than to relax. Evil adapts, it doesn't retire. By summer, documentaries came calling. Netflix, Hulu, even a true crime podcast with a name so dramatic I almost laughed, The Widow's Web. I turned most of them down except one small independent filmmaker, a woman named Tessa Liu, who wanted to focus not on the murders but on what came after. Everyone covers the crime, she said. No one covers the recovery. You built something from the ashes. That's rare. I agreed on one condition. No reenactments, no fake dramatizations, just truth. When the documentary released 6 months later, it went viral. Not because it was flashy, but because it was human. Viewers saw a small town learning accountability, a broken contractor rebuilding his life, and a mountain that refused to stay haunted. The comments section was flooded with messages. This gave me courage to fight my HOA. My dad lost his house to scammers. I'm going to court next week. Good always wins eventually. For once, the internet wasn't tearing something down. It was lifting it up. That autumn, I got a call from Reyes. Her tone was lighter than usual. We found him, she said. The broker, yeah. Name's Harold Stone. 68. Used to work in real estate law. He's been laundering fraudulent deeds through shell companies since the 90 seconds. Kendra was one of his protégés. Where is he now? In custody, she said with a satisfied sigh. Tried to bribe his way out. didn't work. He's flipping on half his network to save himself. You'll be happy to know, he mentioned, Pine Ridge said you ruined a very profitable system. I couldn't help but laugh. Best compliment I've ever gotten. When I hung up, I stepped outside. The air was crisp, the forest alive with the smell of rain and cedar. I thought about Walter Earl and all the others. They hadn't just been victims, they'd been teachers. They taught me that truth doesn't fade, it echoes. That winter, I installed a new wooden sign at the edge of the driveway, the Briggs Foundation, where honesty takes root. Below it, smaller, letters carved into the grain read, in memory of those who built before us. Sometimes tourists stop to take pictures. Sometimes locals drop by to talk. Every now and then, a new survivor walks up that path carrying nothing but grief and hope. I always tell them the same thing: pain's a lot like snow. It covers everything for a while, but when it melts, the ground grows stronger. And every time I say it, I believe it a little more. That night, as I sat by the window with a mug of coffee, a soft light flickered in the distance, the creek reflecting the moon steady in silver. The wind carried faint laughter from the volunteer cabins down the hill. I realized then the mountain didn't just witness tragedy. It remembered triumph too. And maybe that's what Walter meant when he wrote his note. The mountain would remind us it's still good. As the fire crackled low, I whispered into the quiet, "We did it, old man. We built truth." The mountain didn't answer. It didn't need to. A year after the storm, Pine Ridge didn't feel cursed anymore. The town had changed subtle at first, then all at once. The whispers were gone. The eyes that once judged now greeted me with nods and warmth. Even the air felt cleaner, lighter. It wasn't just that Kendra Malloy was locked away. It was that her shadow no longer defined us. We had learned to live beyond her lies. Every morning I woke before sunrise, brewed coffee, and sat on my rebuilt porch. From there, I could see the creek sparkling under the early light, the reflection of pine trees like brushstrokes across the water. Some mornings, fog rolled through and blanketed everything in silver, reminding me how easy it is for truth to vanish until the sun burns it clear again. The Briggs Foundation had grown far beyond what I ever imagined. We weren't just helping victims now, we were teaching law enforcement, hosting seminars on fraud detection, even partnering with universities for forensic accounting research. Agent Reyes, now retired from the Bureau, served as our lead legal advisor. Ava ran day-to-day operations with the kind of efficiency only trauma survivors can master. Lucas, who used to just swing hammers, now trained volunteers in home restoration projects for scammed families. And me, I'd become the reluctant spokesperson for resilience. Every TV interview, every article, every time someone called me a hero, I felt the same quiet discomfort. I wasn't a hero. I was just a man who refused to let a liar write my ending. Still, there was something healing about watching others rebuild what was stolen from them. One family, the Carters, had lost their entire savings to a fake HOA board in Texas. When they arrived, their kids wouldn't speak. 6 months later, those same kids were fishing in Walters Creek and laughing like they'd never known fear. Watching that, I understood something profound. Justice isn't a verdict, it's continuity. It's life moving forward when evil thought it had stopped you. One quiet afternoon that summer, I received an unexpected visitor. A federal courier dropped off a sealed manila envelope from the Department of Justice. Inside was a short letter stamped and signed. "This is to inform you that as of the 12th of June, 2027, United States v. Harold Stone has concluded. Defendant pled guilty to 27 counts of real estate fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. His cooperation resulted in the dismantling of an interstate network responsible for over $14 million in stolen assets. Your testimony and documentation from the Briggs Foundation were instrumental to this outcome." Attached was a single line at the bottom, handwritten by Reyes herself. "The mountain roared loud enough, Jake. They heard it. I didn't cry often anymore, but that day I did. Quietly alone on the porch, as the sun dropped behind the ridge." By autumn, the documentary The Widow's Web had reached millions. True crime channels debated our story, but what surprised me most was how many people wrote to say they'd found hope in it. One letter from a young woman in Maine still sticks with me. "I was ready to give up after losing my mom's house to scammers. But your story made me fight. We won. Thank you for proving that even when evil wins small battles, it never wins the war." That one letter reminded me why I still told the story, even when it hurt to relive it. Pain, when shared honestly, can become someone else's map out of darkness. Then came something I hadn't expected: an invitation. The governor's office planned to establish a statewide initiative for property protection and wanted me to keynote its launch. I tried to decline twice, but Ava wouldn't hear it. "You are the voice of this, Jake," she said, crossing her arms. "You don't get to disappear just because it's uncomfortable." She was right, of course, so I went. The event was held in Denver, a sea of suits and spotlights. My speech wasn't rehearsed, it came from the same raw place the whole story had lived. I didn't come here as a victim, I told them. I came here as proof that systems break but people fix them. Laws protect property but community protects people. Don't forget that difference. When I stepped off stage, the crowd stood. Not for fame, for survival, for truth. For every person who ever stared at a forged paper and thought maybe justice isn't real. That night I drove back to Pine Ridge alone, headlights cutting through the rain. The mountain loomed ahead like an old friend, watching, waiting. Months later, the first snow of the season dusted the foundation grounds. We held our annual remembrance at the creek, a tradition that had grown into something almost sacred. Dozens of people gathered candles, flickering against the dark. Among them was Haley Kendra's daughter, now 19. She'd come every year since our first vigil. She'd gone to school in Oregon studying psychology, working toward a career in victim advocacy. When she took the microphone, her voice didn't tremble anymore. "My mother's story doesn't define me," she said, "but it taught me that lies don't vanish, they grow roots until someone rips them out." Mr. Morrison didn't just rip them out, he planted truth in their place. The crowd went silent, then applauded softly. Afterward, Haley approached me at the creek. "I'm moving back," she said, "not to hide, to help." I nodded, throat tight. "You've got a place here anytime." The reflection of candles shimmered on the water like constellations. Somewhere beyond them, I imagined Walter Earl and every other victim we'd fought for smiling in the current. Late that night, after everyone left, I stayed behind at the cabin. The fire was low, the world outside utterly still. I walked out to the porch where snow had already begun to settle again. The mountains stood silent, timeless. And then I remembered something Walter had written in that old note I'd found years before. "If the walls ever feel heavy, open the windows. The mountain will remind you it's still good." So I did. The cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine and smoke. I stood there breathing it in, every scar and memory threading into one truth. I'd come to Pine Ridge broken. The mountain didn't just give me my life back, it gave me purpose. When I turned to look inside, the firelight cast long shadows across the cabin walls, but they didn't feel menacing anymore. They felt alive, like reminders of the people who'd lived, fought, and rebuilt within these walls. I whispered to the quiet, "We kept our promise, Walter." And for the first time in years, I swore I heard a faint voice carried by the wind, just a whisper, almost a laugh. Maybe it was imagination, or maybe mountains remember gratitude too. They say revenge is sweet, but it isn't. It's bittersweet like whiskey after a funeral, warm but heavy. What lasts longer than revenge is reclamation, the act of taking back, not just what's yours, but who you are. I learned that monsters aren't born with claws or teeth. They're made from entitlement, greed, and the belief that no one's watching. But the truth always watches. It may take time, but it always finds its way home. The Briggs Foundation now helps hundreds every year. I still live in the cabin, still fix things, still listen to the creek at night. Because no matter how many liars try to rewrite history, there will always be builders like us, people who take the rubble and make something honest from it. So if you've been wronged, cheated, or stolen from Listen to Me, you can't control the storm, but you can build after it. Brick by brick, nail by nail, truth by truth. And one day when the wind hits just right, you'll hear what I did, the mountain whispering back, "You made it." Drop your thoughts below. Tell me what you'd rebuild if you could start fresh. And if you ever need proof that justice can still win, look up at the mountains. They're still standing.